ICE just received tens of billions of dollars in new funding to dramatically increase their enforcement nationwide. This is the fastest growing rate in United States history. But as systems continue to expand, we're also seeing reports of misconduct and abuse skyrocket. And shocker, most of the people being detained have zero violent criminal records. So what's really happening? And why aren't the American people being made aware of the complete story? So, over the past year, ICE has received roughly $75 billion dollars to expand detention and deportation capacity. That's more than most small countries' military budgets, keep in mind. And that funding has allowed the agency to rapidly hire new agents and contractors, expand detention facilities, increase enforcement operations. But in less than a year, ICE's operational footprint has more than doubled. Experts warn that when enforcement agencies grow this quickly, oversight, training, accountability often struggle to keep up. And recent reporting suggests that that risk is already growing. An Associated Press investigation found multiple ICE agents and contractors arrested in recent months for serious crimes. These cases include bribery, corruption, sexual assault, abuse of detainees, DUIs while armed, and attempted exploitation of minors. Investigators said that one immigration enforcement official got away with physically assaulting his girlfriend for years. Another admitted he repeatedly sexually abused a woman in his custody. A third is charged with taking bribes to remove detention orders on people targeted for deportation. At least 24 U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement employees and contractors have been charged with crimes since 2020, and their documented wrongdoing includes patterns of physical and sexual abuse, corruption, and other abuses of authority. A review by the Associated Press found. That's just among ICE alone. Doesn't matter what administration it is. This is an agency that gets away with crimes. And the Trump administration is doubling the size of this agency that already has very limited accountability. The Trump administration has emboldened agents by arguing that they have absolute immunity for their actions on duty and by weakening oversight. One judge recently suggested that ICE was developing a troubling culture of lawlessness, while experts have questioned whether job applicants are getting enough vetting or training. A previous commissioner of ICE said that once a person is hired, brought on, goes through the training, and they are not the right person, it is difficult to get rid of them, or there will be a price to be paid later down the road by everyone, said Gil Kurlowski, who served as commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection from 2014 to 2017. So there's somebody who should know this job inside and out that says it's almost impossible to fire someone even after they prove themselves to be trigger happy, be aggressive, or be someone that's not there for the job. If you think that I'm being too biased or I'm too liberal, let's hear from a conservative think tank, the Cato Institute. They said the corruption and abuse and the misconduct was largely confined in prior instance to along the border and interactions with immigrants and border state residents. With ICE, this is going to be a countrywide phenomenon as they pull in at so many people who are attracted to this mission, said David Beer, director of immigration studies at the Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank. The Associated Press also reported that ICE officials use badges to try to avoid consequences. The wrongdoing often included the use of ICE resources and credentials to try to avoid arrest and receive favorable treatment. In 2022, ICE supervisor Kobe Williams was arrested in a sting by police in Othello, Washington, while going to a hotel room to meet who he thought was a 13-year-old girl he arranged to pay for sex. Williams had driven his government vehicle, which was filled with cash, alcohol, pills, and Viagra, and was carrying his ICE badge and loaded government firearm. The 22-year ICE veteran offered a rationale that turned out to be a lie, that he was there to rescue this girl as part of a human trafficking investigation. Williams is serving prison time for what prosecutors call a reprehensible abuse of power. With a duty to protect and serve, they wrote, defendants sought to exploit and victimize. This is the pattern with ICE. They feel emboldened, one, by President Donald Trump saying they have absolute immunity to do as they please while they're on the job, and weakening oversight when they're off the job. We also know that a majority of people being detained by ICE have never committed a violent crime. This article from Common Dreams substantiates that, saying that a leaked DHS document shows that a tiny fraction of immigrants detained under Trump have violent criminal records. According to CBS News, the internal U.S. Department of Homeland Security document shows that just 14% of immigrants taken into custody by ICE have either been charged with or convicted of violent criminal offenses. The DHS report also shows 40% of immigrants detained last year have no criminal record at all, except for civil immigration law violations, such as living unlawfully in the US or overstaying a visa, which CBS News noted are typically adjudicated by Justice Department immigration judges in civil, not criminal proceedings. This is why it's important to make the distinction between civil violations and criminal ones because they should receive different responses from federal and state officials. The internal document undermines President Donald Trump's past claims that his administration is focused primarily on deporting the worst of the worst undocumented immigrants, such as those belonging to criminal gangs. In reality, the document shows less than 2% of immigrants detained last year had any sort of gang affiliation. So this is an open lie. Don't let any person lie to you that the Trump administration is ridding this country of violent gang members, because that's not true. That's 2% of the people that ICE is picking up. And some people may try to tell you, oh, it's better that those 2% are out of the country. We already have agencies that are meant to tackle that. ICE is clearly not doing a good job of that. They took 2%. We already have the FBI that are supposed to be going after violent people in this country. We have the DEA that's supposed to be going after drug traffickers. We don't need ICE. They are there to abuse people. The majority of people entering this expanded system are not violent offenders. This is not a narrowly targeted enforcement model. This is a system built for volume and violence. And this is where the public narrative starts to diverge from the data because some national coverage has emphasized that a majority of detainees do have criminal histories. But this is where the public narrative starts to diverge from the data itself. Some national coverage has emphasized that a majority of detainees have some criminal histories, but those criminal histories typically include minor offenses, nonviolent crimes, old cases, or charges that never actually led to convictions. A review by Media Matters found that CBS News led with the statistic that nearly 60% of criminal records, even those that the network's own reporting showed, only had a small fraction of violent offenders. This article from Media Matters says that a CBS Evening News segment wildly distorted CBS News's own reporting, incorrectly suggesting to viewers that a much higher percentage of people held by ICE have violent criminal histories than is actually the case. So they're lying about their own reporting. Can you pay attention to that? I have to emphasize that. CBS reported that only 14% of those that are detained have violent criminal records, yet they air a segment where they're implying that a majority of people do. How does that make sense? How do you distort your own data? That's your own news organization. When the headline number focuses on crime without distinguishing severity, it reinforces the perception that enforcement is targeting violent offenders, even when all of the data is pointing otherwise. And at CBS, inside the newsroom, tensions over editorial direction may be growing. This recent report from Mediaite says that a CBS Evening News producer reportedly quits in fiery note, calls out shifting set of ideological expectations at Barry Weiss-led outlet. There have seemed to be sweeping new vision prioritizing a break from traditional broadcast norms to embrace what has been described as heterodox journalism, Hasty wrote. She added stories may be instead evaluated not just on their journalistic merit, but on whether they conform to a shifting set of ideological expectations, a dynamic that pressures producers and reporters to self censor or avoid challenging narratives that might trigger backlash or unfavorable headlines. So the news, specifically at CBS under Barry Weiss, is intentionally covering up the truth or stories that are unfavorable to the Trump administration. We know this because we saw that a 60 Minutes article or a 60-minute segment was pulled from the air because it talked about ICE unfavorably. This is not what journalistic integrity is. This is what propaganda looks like. This is state run media. Let's put all of the pieces together. ICE is expanding at an unprecedented rate. Multiple personnel have been arrested for serious misconduct. Most detainees are not violent offenders, and major coverage from media outlets often emphasize crime statistics without the full context. Public support for aggressive enforcement is contingent on one key assumption that the agency is targeting the most violent criminals possible. If that reality is that mass detention actually is mostly nonviolent individuals combined with weak oversight and terrible media coverage, then this just isn't immigration policy. This is a major expansion of federal power that abuses its own citizens. When an agency grows this fast, the question isn't how many people are going to get detained. The question is who is being targeted, what safeguards are we losing in the process, and is the public being told the full story? Because expansion without accountability doesn't just change immigration enforcement, it changes the balance of power between the government and the people who live within it.